Thanks for doing this today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
It's a joy to get to speak to you. I'm a big fan of your work on the series and elsewhere. I don't know the series. I'm sorry, on SNL, also on a certain series, and also on a animated. I enjoyed Superman.
Oh my gosh. I'll have to tell Zeb that. He'll be so happy.
I was wondering, where did you start with comedy? Did you have a knack for it as a kid and then just pursue it, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think I had a knack for it as a kid. I was a big prank caller, would get a lot of character work out that way. But I grew up in Kansas City. That's where I am right now, Missouri. And even though I was like obsessed with comedy and pop culture and movies and SNL, it just didn't seem like there was a path in the Midwest. Like I wasn't like a kid actor in like the community theater. And so it just felt like something that like happens in LA and New York and somehow maybe just people who are born there do it or something. I just didn't understand how that was ever a possibility. So I kind of always thought like I would be like I was just the funny person that would quote movies and TV shows, and that was how I'd get my humor out and prank calls. Um, and then I moved to LA to pursue hair and makeup, and I was working in a salon and happened to meet a friend who was in the Groundlings, which I'd heard of, and she invited me to a show, and I went and saw that, just like pure entertainment. After I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can take all my friends and family to this when they come in town and visit. Like, everyone will love this. And she was like, yeah, that's a plus, but also like, don't you want to take a class too? You're funny. And I was like, but I'm not an actor. And then she was like, you leave me 7-minute voicemails in character all the time. I know you can do this. And so it was like her pushing me and my older brother and just other friends that were like, we've been waiting for you to do something like this. And that was kind of where it all started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was a big prank caller back in the
Really?
day. I would still do it today if they just didn't have star 69 and caller ID and it's ruined. There's
I
a
know
whole
nobody
art,
or
yeah, an
nobody
art form.
answers their phone anymore. Like
Yeah,
we're scared to answer our phones. Yeah.
very true. Do you have a favorite prank call?
Yeah, so I used to do this one. I mean, everything I talk about comes back to Kansas City, but I did this one where I'd act like our local DJ, Dennis Pryor, at Mix 93.3. And I would call people and I'd be like, hey, what's up? This is Dennis Pryor from Mix 93.3 doing random phone calls. And people were always like, oh my God, Dennis Pryor. And I was like, answer this piece of trivia and win tickets to the Chiefs game this Sunday. And then I'd ask them a really like easy question, like who is the male lead in Titanic? And they'd be like Leonardo DiCaprio. And I was like, come on down to the station and get your free tickets. And then I left it at that. But I would do that call probably 20 or 30 times a day, like, just entertaining myself or my friends. And it always worked. And then it just so happened, but I cleaned my hands of it, that my mom was Dennis Pryor's travel agent. And so he had called her to set up like a Cancun trip once. And she was like, how are things down at the station? And he was like, good, but some idiot keeps calling people and telling them they want free Chiefs tickets. And we have like lines of people coming out and we don't have those tickets. And my mom was like, that's my daughter. So,
That's great.
yeah.
I absolutely love prank calls. I mean, it was my pastime. I grew up in Buffalo, so not
Oh,
Missouri, but close enough. And
yeah.
you had to
Similar.
find things to do. The modern day version of that is when you get the phone calls about your auto policy or whatever it is, and you just say, okay, you're going to torture me, I'm going to torture you, and then you get to do that character work. Do you do
That's what
that?
my older brother does that. I'd never thought of that. I just, like any other person get annoyed, and I'm like, don't call this number again. But my brother was like, no, you can like reverse prank them. So yeah.
It's awesome. It's still alive. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
um I don't know if that's a good thing. Growing up watching SNL, who are your favorites?
Well, I mean, definitely the first sketch I ever remember seeing, my parents showed me the Too Hot for the Hot Tub, James Brown, Eddie Murphy one. So that was like, it's so weird because back then I don't know if we had like a compilation tape or something, because I remember seeing that sketch so much. I'm like, how did we get to watch that all the time? Um, but that we would watch over and over. I loved Dana Carvey when he would do his Robin Leach. That's the first time I remember making my parents laugh, was doing an impression of Dana Carvey doing an impression of Robin Leach. Um, so those were big. And then, there was that year where there was like the big switchover where Molly Shannon and Sherry O'Terry and Will Ferrell came in. And that felt like that was such an exciting SNL year. So that's one of my favorite times too.
Yeah, that's great. Those are some of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
Phil Hartman was
Oh
a
yeah.
legend.
Incredible.
You have this amazing ability to create these characters, and they're just pitch perfect and hilarious, and like everyone seems to know, like, oh, I know that person. Uh, were you always an observer of people, or like where did you mine that from?
I really think both my parents are such characters, and they're young at heart, and I think they divorced early on when I was young. So, being passed between kind of two single parents, and I feel like I was really along on their ride, and they just had such a motley crew of friends. And I always said my dad, he was a chauffeur, and so he, even though we didn't have a lot of money, he would take me to school in a limo. So it was very confusing, because kids would be like, "You rich bitch." And I'm like, "No, we're poor. My dad's the driver." But this is all to say, like, sometimes he would pick me up from school in the limo, and he would open the back door for me into the big limo space. And like, I remember this one time he picked me up, and it was like full of all these like tattoo artists and like, people that would typically scare like a 6 or 7 year old, but I was like, those are just dad's friends. And there was just like a tattoo convention in town, and he had been out hanging out, and like he was keeping the party going, and I was just a kid along for the ride. So I feel like they really inspired me. They're friends. And then I recently just had a friend visit me in Kansas City, and we were out at just kind of a charity event, and she was like, "Oh, I get why you play the type of women you play. I'm seeing a lot of them around here." So I think it was family and where I'm from.
I mean, I find it amazing where the comedy, when that seed gets planted, where the inspiration that comes from, where you, like I said, where you mine it from, because it's everybody's different, and it's all these different observations that come together on one show that has been obviously doing quite well for 40 plus years. Is it almost 50, right?
Yeah, we'll be season 49 next year.
Wow, it's insane.
Yeah,
I've been watching way too long.
same.
I'm a lot older than I thought I was. So what was it like the first time you walked on that stage, and even more the first time you get to yell live from New York?
Well, the first time I walked on the stage was during my audition, which there's so many different iterations that I've read about in all those books of where you audition. And, sometimes it's at a comedy club, and sometimes it's, on home base where the host does the monologue. And I was so prepared for the audition. I was so memorized. I knew it. I rehearsed it like thousands of times. But the thing I didn't prepare for was that they were walking me into the studio, and I would be doing it on that stage. And suddenly and I'd never gone to a taping of SNL, so I'd never seen it in person. So there was this moment where they're walking me out, and I step on the stage, and basically I have 5 seconds till my audition begins. But I was like, I had that feeling that was like, "Oh, can I get a pic?" Or like, "Will you take a picture of me?" Like, and then it was suddenly they were like 5, 4, 3, and then it was going. So I had a fan moment, and then suddenly I'm auditioning, and I really don't remember like a second of that, because it was just so fast and scary. And then the first time I said live from New York was the last episode of my first season. And it just so happened that in that sketch, or in that cold open, Robert De Niro was in it, and Ben Stiller. And so I got to say live from New York with them, and that was really cool.
That was incredible. I think I would be in a puddle of tears if I even get emotional every time I hear that saxophone play at the end. It
Yeah.
it triggers something in me, and I'm like, I don't. If I was there live, I'd be the only person crying.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Can you discuss a little bit about what went into creating your most popular character, Angel?
Um, that one was just I remember being at home one night and I saw the preview for that Jake Gyllenhaal, Rachel McAdams movie Southpaw.
Mhm.
And I love sports movies. I love boxing movies, seen them all my life. So I was like, "Ooh, cool, what's this?" And I'm watching it and they cut to Rachel McAdams' character and whatever. I mean, I think I heard her be like, "I'm the fighter." And I was like, wait a second, like a couple years ago, I feel like Amy Adams said that um The Fighter. And then I was like, and then didn't like Adrian say a similar thing in Rocky? I was like, I think all these women might be on the same script as these boxers' girlfriends. And so and then it was a friend who was I was putting together an audition not for SNL, but it was for Just for Laughs festival in Montreal. And I was like, I want to do just this character that's like every boxer's girlfriend. And he was helping me. He was like, from every movie about boxing ever. And I was like, yes, because that's true. And then we were also workshopping it and we figured out like, yeah, and they always say, I'm taking the kids to my sister's. Like, it's just, and it was just one of those things. It's one of those times where I felt like I really like lightning struck. I struck gold. Anytime I would do it, people just got it immediately. And that was the first thing. It wasn't the first sketch I got on SNL, but it was the first weekend update. And Larry David was the host that week. And I mean, I was so nervous performing it at the table, but I was fully in the character and I knew it was going well. And some of my sweet castmates afterwards were like, "Did you see Larry and Lauren?" And I was like, "No, I would never look over there." And they were like, they were hitting each other and like, and that whole week, Larry David kept on asking me like, "Is it in?" And I was like, well, "I don't know. Like, I don't know when you find out the weekend updates get in." And he was like, "Well, let me know if it's not getting in. Like, do I need to talk to someone? Like, that deserves it." There's a very supportive vibe around it.
It sounds like the dream, really. It's like
Yeah.
it's great to see. Like I said, I've always loved your work, and I think I think it was SNL that I saw you first, but then now it's whenever you pop up anywhere or just your voice pops up. You
Thank
know,
you.
I love to make sure I watch or listen. Um, and I think we're short on time. I could go into every character and discuss all that, but I think before I do, I need to ask about Boop.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Shrinking was one of my favorite series of the year. What a surprise! I mean, when you look at the cast, it's not that much of a surprise, but it just delivers in so many different ways. What was it like being involved with that, and also being the exclamation point at the end of the sentence of the season?
Well, it all felt like like, is this really happening? Like, even from the moment I found out I was getting to do it, and then I saw the cast, and the cast is incredible, and I see that it's Bill Lawrence, and then, you see Harrison Ford, and I'm like, wait, me? Like it was like, are you sure I get to do this? And it wasn't until like I was on the set the first day that I was like, no, you're really doing this. And working with Jason was incredible and Bill. And then everyone kept on telling me, they're like, there's big things in store for your character this season. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm loving what's happening now, but everyone just kept on like leading me on, being like, something big is coming, and I mean, I was just tracking her story. And I think maybe one time I was a little bit like, am I going to kill him or like, what's going to, but I was like, no, there's just like no way. I don't, it just, that just feels like such a big moment in a movie or anything that I was just like, I don't know, you save that for the Harrison Fords. And then, yeah, I read the script for the finale and I was like, oh my God, I do. Or I push him and then the fact that it was the very last moment, I just kept on being like, are you sure that I get to do this? It was such an honor.
And with that great Florence and the Machine music
I
playing
know.
underneath it all.
I know.
What a dream.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
As I've said several times, I really enjoy your work, and it gives me hope, and hope for all those people who like to do prank calls. and have lost that, maybe they have a chance. Maybe this, you've set the path for open the doors for a lot of other people.
I feel it. I encourage kids, even though phones are different these days, continue the prank calling. One of my like shining achievements was I've gotten to do crank anchors a few
Oh
times.
yes.
And I'm like, it paid off. Like I'm getting paid to do pranks. Like there's something, when my mom I think one time we actually got a letter from the phone company that was like, we're shutting down your phone if this continues. And I was like, Mom, I promise it's all gonna pay off. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a
Of
great day.
course. You too. Bye.